Michael, it's great to see you. I think it'll be morning in the UK. I hope you're doing well. Are you happy? I mean, England, perfect. Once again in the qualifiers, international break, putting them in a good position heading into the Euros.
Yeah, we're very happy out here. It's been brilliant so far. I think, of course, the pandemic was such a bad thing across the world, but if anything, it's done England a favour. An extra 1 year to prepare, another 1 year for some of our younger players to get more experience. And I think we go into the European Championships with a big, big chance.
Do you feel that being delayed by 1 year has actually helped England? Because if I remember correctly, Harry Kane was a doubt because he was injured at this point last year. John Stones, his form was not what it is now. I know he made a mistake last night, but he did create an assist. You probably argue someone like Grealish, if he was fit for the Euros, which we expect him to be, will also be someone else who benefits from this.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think some of the big players, some of the experienced players were injury doubts at this point last season. So I think it's good that everybody's got back fit. I also think the names that you mentioned, the likes of Foden, Jack Grealish, they're players that were young and probably weren't quite ready for the international team at the time. So I think that's a fantastic thing. The only thing and the only position that I'm still none the wiser about than I was 12 months ago is the goalkeeper. I think Jordan Pickford will probably play, but I'm not sure that's a perfect scenario. So I think the goalkeeper is our only question mark. The rest of the team has definitely benefited from that extra 1 year.
Well, who do you want to see in goal? Because you got Nick Pope, who's been playing during the qualifiers. He conceded a goal last night, and I saw one person say it wasn't Stones' fault, it was actually Pope's fault for the pass initially. But he's with Burnley, who are right at the bottom of the table. Dean Henderson has been playing recently for Manchester United. I don't know if he's going to keep that position after the international break, particularly as De Gea is already back. And, of course, like you mentioned, Jordan Pickford, or maybe even Sam Johnson, who's been called up.
Yeah, I think what you've got at the moment is that Gareth Southgate's he's got no more games before the European Championship, so there's very little to go on. And the current person that has got the gloves is Jordan Pickford, and possession is 9/10 of the law, as they say. So he's got the possession of that #1 shirt. I think if you fast forward in another year or so, it might be somebody like Sam Johnson or Henderson, as you mentioned, at Manchester United. I actually think the best goalkeeper is probably Nick Pope. But the problem with Pope is he's not really good enough with his feet. As we saw last night, and as you rightly mentioned, his feet are a big problem. He's not good enough with his feet. And England play a passing style. We need players, and especially a goalkeeper, that's very good with his distribution. So from a goalkeeping point of view, I think Pope is the best goalkeeper. But from a distribution point of view, I think that's where he lets himself down. I think that Southgate is going to stick with what he's got and go with Pickford.
What about the rest of the squad? Because from the outside, it looks like Southgate rewards players that have always delivered for him. Kieran Trippier, I think, is a good example of this. He's missed a large chunk of the season because of a suspension. He was called up. Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't. Who's going to be sitting at home during the Euros? Because we can't call up all of the players we're talking about. There's only so many places in the squad for Gareth Southgate.
We've got two positions in particular where we've just got so many talented players. Some players we're very reliant, some positions we're very reliant on certain players, and we've not got much backup. But right back is one area that we are just full of international quality. Trent Alexander-Arnold, not even in the squad. Some people say he's the best right back in the world. Well, he can't get into the England squad at the moment. You've got Reece James at Chelsea, who's a phenomenal athlete. You've got Wan-Bissaka that doesn't really get a mention at Manchester United, but certainly in terms of defensive capability, he's one of the best around. And then, of course, you've got Trippier, that's the tried and trusted. And then you've got someone like Kyle Walker as well at Manchester City that we also know that Gareth Southgate likes. So you've got 5 players there that all could wear that shirt. Now, I happen to think Trent Alexander-Arnold is the best attacking fullback. I think Wan-Bissaka is probably the best defensively. And I think Reece James sits in between there. He's good defensively and he's good going forward. I don't think Wan-Bissaka will be considered. Kyle Walker has got the advantage that he can play as the right side of a back three if Gareth Southgate wants to change to a back three. He's been going with a back four, though, so I think he might stick with a back four in the tournament, but that flexibility could be important. If it was me at the moment, I think that Reece James is probably the likeliest player to play right back. I know Trippier's done well for Southgate, but I think some of the young guns are improving at a rate of knots, and I would put my money on Reece James being the right back to start the tournament.
Okay, what about further up front? What about that creative player? England are producing so many at this point in time. You mentioned Foden. We've got Grealish there. We've got Mason Mount. There's probably about 10 players off the top of my head I could list out, and not all of them can go. So who do you want to see? Who makes up the strongest England side possible?
Well, this is definitely the other area that's a real conundrum for Gareth Southgate. In terms of centre-forward, there's only one player, and that's Harry Kane. So he's written in stone. He's in the team straight away. But it's those three positions. What we're thinking England will do is play four at the back, two holding midfield players in a Rice and a Henderson if he's fit, maybe. Or, of course, the lad from Leeds has been playing in recent games. So, and then we think there's going to be three players in behind Harry Kane. And as you mentioned, you could list so many. Rashford, Foden, Grealish, Maddison is not really getting a mention at the moment. You know, there's so many players. I happen to think that, I mean, Sancho is another one that could be considered. I think that he might find a place for Foden. I think Rashford's pace is going to be really important. You've got to have Sterling in your team. He's been fantastic over the years. So if it was me, I would go Grealish as a number 10. I'd go Foden on the right and Sterling on the left, and maybe use Rashford as an impact player.
Okay. I want to ask about your personal experience. I'm not sure if you heard my intro just now, but looking at your honours list, you've done it all at club level. The Premier League, the FA Cup, the League Cup, the UEFA Super Cup, the UEFA Cup, and individual awards. The Ballon d'Or does not come any more prestigious than that, but there's a lack. And you're not the only England player, of course. You have to go back all the way, every squad except for the 66 squad. Is that the biggest regret? Because I think you scored in, what, 4 major international tournaments in a row for England, am I correct?
Yeah, you're correct. Yeah, it's, well, as we all know, I mean, international football is so difficult. You get, you know, in your domestic league, you get 4 trophies to play for every single year if you're playing at a decent, you know, a good club. Whereas at international level, you have to wait for 4 years for every World Cup. Every 4 years is a European Championship. So, of course, winning something is far more difficult. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the one regret I would have is being involved in such a great era for the English national team. We had so many great players, and I know people will say, well, why didn't you win anything? But it is so. We had Spain at the time that were another unbelievable side. France at the time were very, very strong, and we obviously didn't manage to win anything. It's a huge regret in my career. But when you look back at that team, I mean, it still makes me wonder how we didn't win anything. Of course, Brazil were always a good team at that time, and they knocked us out the World Cup at the quarter-final stages. But yeah, very disappointing not to win anything. But it will never take away the great memories of playing with so many great players in that team.
You've played in the Euros yourself. When I look at this tournament, I look at the winners in the last 20, 30 years, it seems like there could be an underdog. Portugal were not favourites against France, yet they went on to win it. I think back to 2004, Portugal were the favourites against Greece at home. This is a tournament you would know very well indeed, but Greece won it. It was a year of the underdogs because Porto as well won the Champions League that year. Do you reckon we could have an underdog story in Euro 2020?
Well, yeah, when Greece won it, I was part of that team. And actually, Portugal, who got to the final, they knocked us out on penalties. I scored against them in the quarterfinals early on, and they managed to get back in the game. And of course, we went out on penalties to them. I think Portugal are a very good side. I think they've got a very good chance. I mean, your eyes naturally get drawn to the top teams, you know, the France, the Portugals, the Spains, the Englands, Italy, Belgium, Holland. There's lots of great teams. I can't see. I can see there being a surprise in terms of getting far in the competition. Maybe an underdog get to the semi-finals, but I really think that you're looking at one of those big nations that are going to win it again.
What about Germany? Now, they just lost a World Cup qualifier for the first time since 2001, that famous night, the 5-1 victory, which England, of course, inflicted on Germany. We don't need to go into detail. I know you know all about that. But do you reckon they're going to underperform in this tournament as they did at the last international tournament as well?
Well, before the last tournament, everybody always used to say that Germany always turn it on when it's the big occasion. As soon as you always have question marks going into big tournaments, but then they deliver. Of course, the last tournament, they didn't necessarily do that, and that would have ruined their confidence, the defeat to North Macedonia yesterday. I don't personally think Germany are going to win it. I think they've got a reasonably strong team, but when I look at the squad list of other teams, Germany aren't on my radar of teams that are going to win it this time.
Hello, Michael. Besides England, who do you rate will win the Euro 2020?
If you couldn't hear that, I'll repeat the question. Could you hear it?
No, I heard it okay. I heard it perfectly well. Yeah. My ideas of the winners of the European Championships, I'm gonna narrow it down to 3 teams. I think Portugal, we've got a fantastic team. I think England, you have to have England in there as a great chance this time. I think we've got a fantastic team. And the last team that I'm going to pick is France. France are very, very strong. And when we look at some of the other fancied teams, I know somebody's got a Holland shirt there. If Van Dijk was playing, that would be a huge asset, but I can't see Holland winning. Belgium are a very good side, but I think Belgium were fantastic about 4 years ago. Since then, the likes of Company has stopped playing. Hazard isn't the same player as he was necessarily, or he's not in the same form. I think maybe Belgium had their chance to win it maybe 4 years ago, 6 years ago. I'm not sure about them now. I'm not sure about Italy. Germany not in great form. Spain are not the force they were. So yeah, I'm going to shorten the list to England, to France and to Portugal.
Are there any young players to look out for? Because, Michael, you are the prototype youngster exploding at an international tournament and cementing your status as a legend for that country and a global icon. So from your time back in '98, a goal against Argentina, we move forward, and I think of the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo impressing at a young age. Kylian Mbappe is probably the most recent example. Erling Haaland is another one. Is there anybody, apart from Phil Foden, that you think, and this doesn't have to be from England, that you think we should be keeping an eye on? A youngster that could make it as the next superstar?
Well, there will always be a youngster that crops up in these tournaments that bursts onto the international stage. It's a real shame that Norway aren't in the championships. It would have been great to see Haaland in this competition and see him against these top players. There could be anybody that breaks through. I really would like to go back to England, though, and look at the likes of Foden. I know you said we're not allowed to mention him, but what about somebody like Jude Bellingham that also plies his trade in Germany, in German football? He's only 17 and he played for England the other day, and he got lots of plaudits for how calm, how cool, how talented he is. So it could be someone like Jude Bellingham that gets a chance. Of course, Mason Mount is a fantastic player as well. There's so many youngsters for England. I think there'll be one hero that emerges.
Is there an underrated player for England, do you feel? Because I see Declan Rice getting a lot of plaudits right now.
Yeah, Declan Rice is getting a lot of plaudits. He's been, with England, I don't think we've got too many great sitting midfield players. Declan Rice is one of them. And of course, there's been lots of speculation about whether the likes of Chelsea or Manchester United or Manchester City might come in and try to prize him away from West Ham at some point. So that's the standard that people see him and the level that people view him at over here in the UK. He's a fantastic player. And he'll be a player that doesn't necessarily grab the headlines because he does a lot of the dirty work and leaves the more talented, let's say, charismatic players in front of him to go and grab the headlines. But yeah, Declan Rice will be a very important player in these Euros for England, especially if Jordan Henderson doesn't make it through to fitness.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. And it's almost a fairy tale story. Him and Mason Mount, best mates, not just in recent years, but since they were kids. There's lots of pictures on the internet. They look about 5, 6 years old. They still go on holiday together. Must be that extra bit special to wear the 3 lions on your chest, but to do so with your best friend. I mean, how close were you with someone like Carragher when you were playing?
Yeah, me and Carragher were big friends, but we only became big friends at around 16, 17 years of age, and then, of course, our friendship flourished. But these guys have been friends for a long, long time. 2 outstanding players. I think Mason Mount, people are going to be hearing a lot more about him over the next few years. A fantastic player. In the mould of Frank Lampard. Frank Lampard has certainly shaped his career to date, taking him on loan to Derby and then, of course, into the Chelsea first team. But he's a tremendous player, scores a lot of goals, a lot of energy. And I think he's another player that's going to be very, very crucial. He's going to announce himself to the world after these Euros.
Hi, Michael. Avinish here from The Star. We would like to know what are your thoughts on the veterans that are going to take part in Euro 2020, because we have the likes of Sergio Ramos, Zlatan, who are going to be part of this tournament. What kind of impact do you think they would make for their teams in this tournament? We would like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I think it adds so much spice to the tournament, doesn't it? We talk about the young players and we're so excited to see the young players and who's going to be our next heroes, the next sensational players. But it's also really nice to see some of the older players and to see them still playing at such a high level. I think Sweden are so delighted that Zlatan is going to come back for the tournament. I think it's going to add an extra bit of intrigue for everybody. He can still do it at the top level. I don't think his game is reliant on speed necessarily, so I think it's understandable why he can play for many, many years. And Ramos is another great example that you mentioned, a player that seems to play at the top level. I mean, he scores so many important goals for a defender. It's unbelievable. Champions League goals and international goals. I don't think there's many defenders over the years that have scored as many goals as he has. So, yeah, it's great to see older players still doing it. Unfortunately for me, I think I'm not going to make a comeback. But it's great to see some others.
You look like you could still play, Michael. I follow you on Instagram. I know you're keeping very fit.